Welcome to the Collecting the Past podcast. Funded by the National Endowment for the Humanities and in partnership with the Flannery O'Connor Institute for the Humanities, this project paired students from Georgia College with community members to collect oral histories from individuals who either lived in Milledgeville during the heart of O'Connor's writing career or whose lives were shaped by events that took place during this period. Our goals with the project are to expand the existing historical narrative of our town by documenting unwritten life stories and creating a public digital archive. As you'll hear, the students had fun creating their own podcasts in the style of their choice. Like our narrators, each episode has its own personality.
I was actually on the advisory board for the School of Education for a while.
Oh, really? That's so cool.
I'll tell you why I quit.
All right. Okay. This is Charlotte Aexel, and I'm here interviewing Mrs. Becky Brock for the Flannery O'Connor Institute for the Humanities Collecting the Past, Stories of Flannery O'Connor's Milledgeville Oral History Grant. Today is April 24th, 2024, and it's just past 10 a.m. So if there's anything that you want to share right off the bat, we can. Otherwise, I can talk about some of the questions that I had as well. It's up to you.
Go ahead. I'm not sure yet exactly what you're interested in. So
Sure. So you said you didn't grow up in Milledgeville.
Mm-mm.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up out in the country from Camac, Georgia, which is in Warren County.
Okay.
Warrington was our county seat.
Okay.
So I grew up on a cotton farm.
Oh, wow. What was that like?
Well, it was. I mean, I've never lived in a city or anything, so I thought I was coming to the big city when I came to Milledgeville to college, to the women's college.
Yeah. Is there any particular memory from growing up on a cotton farm that is particularly striking to you? I think that's really interesting.
Just the space. I mean, we were outside a lot, and that's what I still like to do, be outside. Like had animals. We had all kinds of animals. I still like all that. So just being outside, nature.
Yeah, yes, I like that too. I came from a really small town as well, so I also thought Milledgeville was the big city when I got here. So yeah, okay, so you came to Milledgeville for college, right?
Right.
Okay.
My mother said I came home in the second grade and said, I'm going to be a teacher. And I never changed.
Oh, wow. That's so cool.
I never changed. And our superintendent, my mom had a talk with the superintendent of schools in Warren County and wanted to know where I should go to school. Nobody in my family had ever been to college. And there was no way they could send me. So this was like a dream of my parents because there's no way they could have sent me. And but they asked him where would you get a good education as a teacher? And he said the number one teacher college in the state was the Women's College of Georgia in Milledgeville. And then my counselor is the one who got, my high school counselor, who was also the home ec teacher. We had to double up. She found out about the teacher scholarship, and that's how I got to college.
That's so cool. So Women's College of Georgia is different than Georgia State College for Women.
Oh yeah, because you have boys.
Yeah. So did that happen while you were there, or was that after?
Pardon?
Did they become co-ed while you were there? Or
Yes, while I was there. I went in '65, and I think they let us vote if we wanted to be co-ed, and we always voted it down.
You didn't want to be co-ed?
They also let us vote on whether we wanted to have sororities, and we always voted it down also because it was cliquish.
Oh.
It made it cliquish. And but anyway, in '68, who knows, the higher ups of the regents, board of regents, decided they weren't going to let boys in, and we had like 35 boys. And then in '69, when I graduated, we had several, but not too many. So yeah, I was actually here when they changed the name to from the Women's College of Georgia to Georgia College.
Okay.
And they let us choose what we wanted on our class ring, WCG or GC. And I chose WCG because that's the college I went to.
Yeah. So you said you voted down the sororities and the college becoming co-ed. So would you describe the community at a women's college to be more tight-knit than at a co-ed college or one with sororities?
More what?
Tight-knit?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. Everybody knew everybody, if not by name, by face, and classes were small, and we had rules that you wouldn't believe. Every freshman, the day you got there, you got a rule book this thick. You had to read that rule book, and you had to take a test over it in order to have any privileges whatsoever. You had to pass a test on the rule book. And there were lots of rules about dress. As a freshman, we could not be out of our dorm room after 7:30 at night. Everybody was in their room. You could come out to go down the hall to the bathroom because there were community baths, but that was it.
Wow.
And you couldn't ride in a car for the first month. You couldn't. We could go out on Friday and Saturday nights until 11, I believe it was. But you had to check in and check out as you left and came back. And if you were late, had to go before the tribunal in your dorm, and you had some punishment you had to do. You had to wear a dress. There was no such thing. Only place you could wear pants was on back campus playing tennis, something like that. Lots of rules, but less rules than I had at home, so I didn't feel like I was suffering that much. So.
Sure. So the rules about dress, I know you had to wear a dress. Was there anything specific you had to wear? Was there a uniform, or was it just...
No, there were no uniforms, but you had to wear dresses. And one of the requirements, they sent us, they mailed us lists of things that we needed to bring with us as a freshman, and one of them was a black dress with a strand of pearls. Because they did have a little tea once in a while, and you had to wear your black dress and your strand of pearls and your heels, and they taught you how to have tea and how to entertain, those kind of things. So
that's so cool.
It's part of your lady training.
Sure.
Nobody had a car, by the way. There's no such thing. We didn't need parking lots because we didn't have. There wasn't but like one parking lot in the whole place because nobody had a car. There probably wasn't 10 cars.
Oh my gosh, there's so many cars on campus these days. It's terrible. So did you live in a dorm that was, is it still here today?
I lived on 3rd floor Terrell. All
Wow.
freshmen lived on Terrell and with a few on Bell. And I lived on 3rd floor Terrell, no elevators. And I noticed, I went to Terrell a couple of years ago, and they had remodeled, but they kept the stairs, the wooden stairs. I was really glad to see that. I fell up those stairs several times. I never fell down them, but I fell up them several times. But that was a lot of fun, living in a dorm with all those girls, and it was a lot of fun. And we did such bad things as, since I lived on 3rd floor, we knew the girls that lived underneath us on 2nd floor, and we had a little basket that we'd lower down and send snacks to them, and they'd send things to us. And we had one little guy that was, I don't know his name, I wish I did. One guy, he was an old guy that probably had retired from the police department, and he had a little guard station at night. And we called him Deputy Dog because that was a cartoon, at that time. And that was the big thing, is to lower that basket up and down and send them messages without getting caught. So that was our daring things we used to do.
That's funny. So what was Milledgeville like?
You know where the Goody Gallery is?
Yes.
That was the Plowboy hamburger place, and it was out of town. I only went once or twice because it was so far out of town. So there was nothing past on 441 Highway. There was nothing past where the Goody Gallery is. Nothing. So the town was just the downtown area, which we could walk, all over town, and we did. And downtown was a movie theater and several little restaurants. and gathering places for us and for the cadets. Back then, GMC had a large junior college cadet corps, and they were required to wear uniforms at all times, and not like today. So downtown was full of girls and cadets, and I knew bunches of girls who married cadets, so we didn't feel particularly deprived of men, but the junior college was a lot bigger, and the cadet corps was a lot bigger. You didn't, like now you can go to the junior college and you don't wear a uniform or anything. Well, they didn't have very many of those students. It was a cadet. It was a military college, and downtown in the afternoon was nice. You could go down and meet the guys.
Yeah, so you talked about the movie theater. I know there used to be a pharmacy or drugstore downtown.
Cover Kids drugstore, and that was one of the gathering places. It was on the corner, where Michi's is, diagonal across the street, diagonal that corner. It's a lone place, I think, now. So that was Cover Kids drugstore. And they had banana splits and had all the fountain drinks, plus a lot of, other stuff that go along with drugstores. But booths you could sit in and get your banana splits. And we always said, now I don't know if it's true, but we always said that his employees worked from the state hospital. And they did used to let some of the patients out there. At that time, there were like 15,000 patients at the state hospital. And it was the largest mental institution in the world. And they did let some of them go out and work jobs and do things. They went into the community. People would go get them to help clean houses or all kinds of little jobs. And we always said that Cover Kid hired some of these for his drugstore because the ladies who worked in there, they would fuss at it. I mean, they'd say, "Eat all this. Now don't make a mess on this table." They would fuss at it, and we say, "Okay, yes, ma'am." So it was an adventure going down there.
Yeah, I can imagine. So Central State Hospital, what kind of presence did it have over the college?
We didn't have a lot to do with the state hospital at all. I know that some of the nursing students, there was a nursing school, but it was very small at the women's college. And I know some of them went out there to do practicums and all, like we went into schools and did things. But not anything much, just a lot of any people we met in town, somebody worked there. It was probably the largest employer. I'm sure it was the largest employer in the county at that time. But no, we didn't really have anything to do with that, except I think some of the students in nursing that went out there. But,
were there any stories about Central State or about GMC, any sort of like myths or little tales that the students told each other?
Well, you know about the one about the tunnel, right?
Mm-mm.
And it's still going on. Was a story about, the mansion, the governor's mansion, was where the governor lived when Millersville was the capital during the Civil War. And the president of the college, when I was there, always lived in the governor's mansion. His family, that was a residence. And so it wasn't a museum like it is now. And in fact, the girls, there was a certain day, and I can't remember maybe it was like a homecoming or something. Anyway, all the girls would gather on the lawn and sing to the president. We just sing. And our president of the college was named Robert E. Lee.
Oh my!
It was. And but I remember him being as a very handsome, nice man, and but the president. The whole time I was there, the president always lived at the mansion. That was his. But there was a old tale that's still around, that there was a tunnel that goes from underneath the mansion and comes up at the Capitol building in GMC, so that they could go secretly, back and forth. Now been around town forever. And on where the Presbyterian Church is downtown, next to GMC, there was a spot there that the ground started sinking. And this was just maybe 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And they thought, the tunnel, they found the tunnel. And they excavated that area, and it was an old well. But there is a little monument there. If you go right now, you'll see there's a little monument there where they tell about it. So,
I didn't know that.
But that was the biggie.
So the president of the Women's College of Georgia was Robert E. Lee. Did you ever meet him or any of his relatives?
Yeah, he had a son that dated one of my friends.
Oh, wow.
Bob Lee. But yeah, I mean, I just knew him he was around campus and did things like your Kathy Cox does now.
Sure.
And so you always saw him. But I don't remember the year that became like a museum instead of a residence, but it was a residence the whole time I was at the college.
That's so cool. I love looking at the governor's mansion. They have people have scratched on the windows. Like back then, it was like 5 days of Christmas break, and it's the early 1900s. So cool.
This city was blessed that Sherman didn't burn it like he did so many others, but he didn't. So, and it was the capital. You would have thought that it would have been the number one target in the state, but thankfully it didn't.
Yeah. So what was daily life like at the women's college? What kind of activities were there, classes?
Well, first we were on this quarter system, which I really think is so much better than the semester system. We were on the quarter system, so you went to every class every day. It wasn't here one day and there another. Every day you went, you had 3 classes, and walking. There was no cars, so you walked everywhere. But nobody wanted an 8 o'clock class, of course. And all meals were served, and there was no Maxwell Student Union. And by the way, Dr. Maxwell taught me English. She was a hoot. That woman scared me to death. Dr. Max, she was anyway, let me go back to the meals. There was a dining hall, which is now, I think it's maybe Parks Hall. I think it's Parks. But the doors to all meals were family style. You sat at a table, an assigned table, and bowls of food were brought to you. And I worked as a waitress for a while there in the dining room. But the door to the dining room was open for 5 minutes for breakfast and for lunch. And after 5 minutes, the doors were locked. So if you were late, you didn't eat. And they served 3 meals a day. And when you went in, you stood behind your chair, and there was a different prayer that we all said or sang usually for each meal before you sat down. And then some of the girls, college girls, worked as waitresses. That was one way many of them got through, got their things paid for. And we had family style, and then you left. But if you didn't get there in time, sorry, you didn't eat.
No.
But Dr. Maxwell, go back to her. She was a tall, thin little woman, strict as she could be. Boy, she scared me to death. She scared all of us to death. And when I saw that I was having her for English, I went, oh, no. But she taught grammar. I learned grammar from her. And I will never forget to this day, she said, write down the word enthused. And I wrote it down. And she said, now draw lightning and all around it, and thunder clouds. And she said, that's not a word. Don't you ever use it in a paper to me. And it is not a word. Enthused is not a word. It's enthusiastic is a word, but there's no such word as enthused. And she said, you put that in a paper to me, and I'm just going to put an F on the top of it, and you'll be done.
Oh, wow.
And I remember that to this day, and every time I ever wrote anything, believe me, And I see things in the newspaper. I'll see enthused. I'm like, oh, Dr. Maxwell would die. But she was quite a teacher. I mean, you didn't get out of there not know grammar. But she's scary. And I felt like such an idiot because I'd been drawing lightning around the word, you know. But she was a neat person. I'm glad they named the student union after her.
Did you have a favorite class or a favorite professor?
Well, I started out as a math major, and so I loved all the math classes. Mrs. Louise Nelson was a math teacher. I learned a lot of math from her. Dr. Farmer was a math. Like I said, I was going on a scholarship, and I had to keep a B average. And usually I counted on my math A bringing up my English C, so I could keep my B. Second quarter calculus, I think I made a C minus, and it scared me to death. Under Dr. Nelson, there was a Mrs. Nelson and a Dr. Nelson. It scared me because I said, if I lose this scholarship, I go home. And not only do you go home, but I had to pay back what they'd given me. So at that point, I had enough to have a minor in math. So I said, okay, I'll have a minor in math and go on with elementary education, which I did, got my degree. And guess what? I always taught math. But I had planned to teach high school geometry. That was my favorite thing. So, but anyway, once you start teaching elementary or middle grades is what I loved and what I taught. If they find out you can teach math, that's what you get to teach. So I always taught math anyway. But, and then later on, I got a master's and a specialist in middle grades education, because that's what I really loved, that age. And then my principal, Harold Watson, who was principal of Carver School, he encouraged me to get my degrees in school administration, in leadership and administration. So I got a master's and a specialist in that too. I got way more than I need to have a doctorate in something, but I don't have it. I just got 2 masters and 2 specialists. But they started a program called the Assistant Principal for Instruction. It was one of our superintendents started that, and he wanted one in the elementary, one in the middle, and one in high school. So the assistant principal didn't do discipline all day, but did instructional things, evaluating teachers, helping new teachers, whatever you needed, getting materials that you needed, anything having to do with instruction. Excuse me. And so my principal hired me to do that. And that was the last year that old Carver was there. And we started the middle school program. And I was on the committee that started that program in Baldwin County. Dr. Lounsbury, I knew him. He was all about middle school, and I thought it was wonderful, the concept and all. Of course, what's practical and what's a concept can be a little bit different, and it was. Dr. Lounsbury's concept didn't take in a lot of the disciplinary things that come with middle school. So, you had to meld both of those together. But I was on the committee, and I enjoyed every second of that committee to form the middle school program in Baldwin County. And then Carver became I guess it was 5th grade. And I went, my principal and I went to Body Middle School, made it Body, instead of Body Junior High, it was Body Middle School. And I stayed there 6 years until they built a new elementary school in the county, the first one in 20 years. And they hired me to open it. I knew nothing about elementary school. But I learned. And of course, a lot of the teachers, elementary teachers, they don't like the higher grades, the 4th, 5th grade, big children. And I thought, those are not the big children. I like them. So it worked out, and I enjoyed every second of that too. But anyway, it was fun. Well, that's how I ended up with so many degrees. And
That's so cool. I wanted to ask you 2 more questions about the Women's College, and then we can move on to talking about working in education. So I wanted to ask you, just for personal interest, what kind of like music, movies, sort of pop culture stuff did students like at the Women's College when you were there?
Well, back then, they had the Golden Slipper program. You've probably heard of it. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
There was a big production at Russell Auditorium every year. It had to include every girl in the college. And every freshman and sophomore was required to be in the production. After that, you could choose whether you wanted to or not. I hated every minute of it. They made me be. But it was a big play production. Like they paired the freshmen with the juniors and the sophomores with the seniors. Those were your sister classes. And so there were 2 performances, one for the freshman, junior, one for the sophomore, senior. And it was a big thing in town. People came to me. And then they had judges who decided which was the best performance. But I mean, and then that one was presented with the Golden Slipper. And it was pretty elementary to me. It was. I mean, I think I was a rock the first year. You had to make your own costume, and anyway, after the sophomore year, when you didn't have to do it anymore, I didn't do it anymore. But some of the girls ate it up. I mean, they loved it. They loved it, and they really, the elementary majors especially, they really loved it. But anyway, it was a big deal on campus. And then, of course, the movie theater downtown was a big deal. That's, the movie Bonnie and Clyde with Warren Beatty came out. I went to see it 3 times. We all fell in love with Warren Beatty and Bonnie and Clyde. But that was about the only place to go was to the movies. There was a restaurant downtown called Ray's Restaurant that had booths and had the music box, had the jukebox and the music thing by the wall, by each table, and you could put your nickel in and pick a couple of songs, That was where we went a lot to. And then GMC had battalion balls, and Georgia College would have social balls gathering. I went to the Wesley House. The Wesley House was still where it is now, and it was a big gathering place because, and I wish I could tell you the name of the guy that ran it, but we didn't have bands back then, not much. There were once in a while at a dance or something you'd have a real band, but at the Wesley House, most every Friday and Saturday night he played records, and the preacher would play records and let us dance, and because I'm a Methodist, we dance. Baptists couldn't dance, but the Methodists did. So that was a big gathering place. The Episcopal Church owned one of the houses across from Russell Auditorium, and every Tuesday night they had supper for anybody who wanted to come. And Father Murray was the priest, and I remember him so well because his obituary was in the newspaper about 2 months ago. I had not thought about him in a long time, but he was wonderful. We had officers for the little group that met on Tuesday night, and some lady in the Episcopal Church would make a casserole. I'd go in and warm it up and fix the tea, and he would sit around with us and let us talk about anything we wanted to talk about. I mean, I guess he was more of a counselor than anything. And I mean, there were Catholic children there. I was a Methodist. I don't know that there was an Episcopal child, but there. But he was very welcoming. He was an adult that would talk to us and about anything we wanted to talk about. And so there was a fair. I used to go to that every Tuesday night, help with the supper and talk. And being a Methodist, he knew I was Methodist. When we have communion, we have grape juice. in Episcopal church, I didn't know they had real wine. So I went to the Episcopal church one Sunday just because of him. And that's another thing. There were so many churches downtown you could visit. You go to different ones. And that was a good experience to go to different churches and see, But anyway, I went to Episcopal church. We were down at the railing, and he held the cup, and everybody took a sip. Well, he held the cup, and I took a sip, and I went, oh, because I didn't know it was real wine. I'd never had alcohol of any kind. and he winked at me and went on down to the next person. Because I didn't know they had real wine.
Oh my gosh.
But he was so anyway, we had religious organizations like that had. Of course, the Methodist Church was right there, with the, but that was about it. The two colleges had dances and things for us to do, and there were tennis courts. Bonner Park, which is now Central City Park, that was Bonner Park. And it was named after Dr. Bonner, who used to teach at Georgia College. I had him one day. He taught history. And he wrote some history books. I'm sure they're at Russell Auditorium. Russell Library. He was a wonderful gentleman. But anyway, Bonner Park used to have a swimming pool, tennis courts, ball field. And so we spent time down there playing ball. So you went, you either went to restaurants, movies, church things, or things the colleges had. There always seemed to be something to do. Nobody had a car. You couldn't get in a lot of trouble.
And what were your friends like at the women's college?
All girls my age, most of them, a lot of them on scholarship like I was. Had several who were there from... See, living out in the country, we didn't have neighbors or anything, but living in a dorm with all these girls my age, it was wonderful. I had a ball. And all from different places, and I had several girls that who had an aunt or a grandmother who went to the women's college and paid their way to go. So a lot of them like that. One met a girl. She was from Hawaii. I never knew anybody from Hawaii. She just had a lot of friends that I still see. I still keep up with. Getting messages from Jane probably. But in fact, as a freshman, the girls that lived on the third floor Terrell, most of us stayed together and went to Wells dorm, second floor Wells. And so that hall was full of girls that we stayed together for 4 years. And it was a lot of fun. In fact, two of them are right here in town. Cheryl Jones, you probably heard of Cheryl Jones. She was Cheryl Crowell. She married Dr. Jones that worked at the college. He was in part of the administrative thing. But after we graduated, he and Cheryl started dating and got married. I had another friend who, from Macon, she married one of the professors. After graduation, he asked her out, and they got married. He passed away a couple of years ago. She's still living in Macon now. So I had two friends that married employees of the college. One, in fact, he was the vice president of the college, Dr. Hemphill and Ann. So anyway, I've kept up. Well, Cheryl was a principal. She was named a principal here in Baldwin County the same night I was. So we've kept up with each other. And Ann Smart is here in town. She was a town girl, but she a day student, but she spent a lot of time in the dorm with me. So but there's a good many just like me that came here, married local guys and stayed. There's a bunch of them.
And then my last question about the women's college was, so you said you got there in 65. Mm-hmm. That would have been 1 year after Flannery O'Connor's death. So did she have a presence over the college at all?
Not really. she was not. No, it was later on that I even heard about her. I don't remember studying her or anything. I just don't remember anything about Flannery O'Connor until years later. So I don't think she was that popular during her lifetime.
I imagine not.
I don't know, but no, she was not a presence like she's not as popular as she is today, for sure. But we didn't, like in English class, we didn't read Flannery O'Connor books or anything like that. So no, I didn't know anything about her.
That's funny. There's an attitude in the English department. I love Flannery O'Connor, but there's an attitude in the English department that's like, oh, we have to read Flannery O'Connor again now.
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay, so I first reached out to you because I was really interested in your work as an educator in Baldwin County during integration. And I was wondering, how would you describe the atmosphere of that? The community, any experiences that you had during that, anything you want to talk about?
Well, I student taught in Clayton County, and Clayton County is one of the up-and-coming wonderful places to be back in 1969. And while I was student teaching, they hired me to teach there 6th grade math and science, just what I wanted, in a brand new school that was opening up the following fall. Well, in the meantime, I meet Jack, who is in the Marine Corps, just home on leave from his second tour of duty in Vietnam. And I started teaching in Clayton County in September '69. We got married in October. Spent our first 3 months with me teaching in Clayton County and him in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, because he was getting out in January. There was no need for me to move up there for 2 months. So, but when he got out in January, he says, I want to go home. I don't want to live in Atlanta. I want to go home. And so here we came. Well, the only opening here in Baldwin County at that time was a 1st grade in an all-black school, Carver School. And I didn't want to teach 1st grade. That was my main thing. But that was the year before integration. And what this county did that year was put some black teachers in some white schools and some white teachers in black schools so that the children could see a different face. And so I taught the rest of that year. I taught a 1st grade all-black class at Carver School. And I didn't have any, I didn't see racial problems. I mean, I just didn't know how to teach 1st grade. That was the worst part. I thought about those children many times, thought, I hope I didn't hurt them too bad because I'm not a 1st grade teacher. But I mean, I enjoyed that year, and I remember as 1st graders, all black, many of them had never been around a white person before. And so and I had long blonde hair, and I weighed about 90 pounds, and they wanted to touch my hair. And so I had lots of little hands on my hair, and they'd come up and put their face on my hair and all that. And so I just learned to put up with, to deal with it. They were just being curious. They were just being curious. And many of them I know had never touched a white person before, So they wanted to touch me. They wanted to touch me. They wanted to feel my hair. And I just went with it. I mean, it was innocent, It was not. They wouldn't look at it as being racial or bad. It was just an innocent curiosity, and that's the way I took it. And I don't remember having any trouble with parents. I just didn't see that. I know that there were some older teachers. Of course, the older teachers were not the ones who got sent to the all-black school or all-white school. It was the younger ones like me. But the next year, which was the first year of integration, Carver School became a 5th, 6th grade school, which was right up my alley. So I was the only teacher who stayed. Everybody else was elementary, primary, and they were scattered around the county, but I was the only one who stayed there because that's what I wanted to teach. And I remember, the only bad thing I remember is some of the older teachers really had a hard time. They just really, and a lot of them retired, a lot of teachers. But as far as racial problems, I don't think we had as many then as we do now. I really don't. Of course, a private school popped up not about that time. John Millage popped up about that time, and so you did have some who went there. But it wasn't a great deal. The school system was like 60% white, 40% black. I don't remember having fights, black-white fights or anything like that. They were just children, and like I said, I think we got along. There were things that I didn't know how to handle. Like the black children would call each other, as a bad thing, they would call each other black. You are black. And said, Miss Brock, you called me black. And I said, well, is that a bad thing? I thought, you are black. That's good. If somebody says, Miss Brock, you're a white woman, I said, okay. I said, that's not something that you should be upset about. I told that many. I don't know where that came from, but that was a big thing. They call each other by, and I thought, how can you do that? That is an insult, So, but anyway, I truly don't remember. And the black teachers, we had some wonderful black teachers. I mean, we had some. Mary Hill was a wonderful black teacher. She was my teaching partner for a good many years. Janie White, who is still around, she was a terrific teacher. Gladys Madison was taught across the hall from me. She was a wonderful black teacher. And she passed away not too many years ago, but her daughter that I taught in the 6th grade, and then later on when I was principal, I hired her as one of my teachers. She's now the principal of Wilkinson County Primary School. So I'm real proud of her. Nicole Madison Stevens. Laura Johnson was a wonderful black teacher. She wrote poetry. She's got a couple of books of poetry out. We were really blessed with some really good black teachers at Carver School. But I guess I know if somebody had come in my class at Carver and said, how many black children I got? I thought, wait a minute, I got to count. I don't think it was the issue then that it is now. I don't believe it. I didn't feel that way, and I didn't know any of the. I never had a teacher, black or white, ever tell me these children can't learn anything, or they're dumb, I never ever heard that. Now I have since, when I was in later years, I went to another school system as an administrative coach for the state. I heard that in another system. I couldn't believe it. I'd gone 30 years and never heard a teacher say that, but I did hear it. And that's why the system was having trouble and sent me to, But anyway, I didn't see the racial issue. Now we had some parents. I had parents who would say, you don't like him because he's black. You don't like him because he. And I said, the rules are the rules. I don't care what you are. This is the rule in my room, and this is what we're going to do. And I never wavered from that. And luckily, Mr. Watson, who was our principal, would stick by you. And but it just didn't seem to be the big issue that I see sometimes today. I don't know. I guess maybe I was just young and dumb. But we didn't have black and white fights, that kind of thing. We didn't have that. I didn't see that.
So you worked before and after integration, and obviously your time in the education program at the college was before integration. Was there any big difference beside, grade number or obviously race? Was there any big difference in like how you prepared to be an educator and how you had to work with integration being the factor?
What now? Were we taught anything about it? No, it was never mentioned.
Okay.
Integration was never mentioned in college.
Yeah, was there a difference in between what you prepared for, like, in preparation for what would have been segregated schools and what you actually used or applied in an integrated school?
No, I didn't. I had my thing. I did it. Mm-hmm. No, there was no allowances made for it. Now, mm-hmm. At the college, our teaching classes, we had to always. I had files when I left school. I'll just let it go. It's Jane. We had file, like if you took what they call a kitty lit class, you came out of there and you had a file. And you were going to have your lessons you could teach, and then you'd have enrichment things for those who were smarter, brighter, needed more, and you'd have remedial things for those who weren't. Because we didn't have special ed. There was no special ed back then. Mm-hmm. For nobody. There was no special ed. So you had to teach all the levels. And so they did prepare us in that way, but that wasn't particularly for integration. That was for any class. All of our files had to contain the main core plus remedial plus enrichment things, so you could reach all kind of levels. But and I used those files for a while until I kept developing my. So when we graduated, we actually had some things to take with us to start off. But of course, you developed your. And back then, you didn't necessarily have a textbook for everybody. You didn't necessarily have, and you sure didn't get new ones every year. And I didn't. And we didn't have. The state didn't interfere. I could go in my class, and if I started a lesson on something and I saw that there was a lot of interest in this direction, I could go with it. I didn't have to stick by a plan. And again, I'll tell you about Harold Watson. He asked me one time. He said, "What can I do to help you teach?" And I said, "Just get out of my way and leave me alone." And he did. And I remember our science book. It jumped all over the world. It had one chapter would be on electricity. The next one might be on planets. The next one might be on human body. I saw no continuity in that at all. So I went to him one year and I said, "I don't want to do this book. I want to start with this parts of the earth, the core and the layer. I want to do rocks and mountains, and then I want to do weather, and then I want to do planets." I said, "That makes sense to me." Then I want to do one-cell animals all the way up to human beings. He said, "Write it up." So I spent one summer writing the science curriculum that I wanted to do, showed it to him. He said, "Go with it." Now, you can't do that today. Mm-hmm. But that made sense to me. And I think it made sense to them. I always tried to incorporate some artistic part for those who. We didn't have art teachers. We did finally get a music person that would come like every other week for 30 minutes or something. I mean, you had to prepare for it. They taught us at Georgia College, you couldn't graduate. First of all, you couldn't graduate with knowing how to swim. You had to take a swimming test as a freshman. If you didn't pass the swimming test, you had to take swimming class. I passed. It was a rough class too. We had to take music, kiddie music, and you had to know enough about reading music that you could play with one hand at least certain little songs. And they had those dulcimers. We had to know how to strum chords on a dulcimer because you had to provide the music education for your children also. So everybody that graduated from Georgia College knew how to strum that dulcimer enough to make a song and sing little songs. And I got a job one time because I could play piano. It was awful. But anyway, you had to know some things about art because a teacher was expected to do all of that. I came away with a card file of games because you had to teach PE. Different games you could do on rainy days, outside. You had to do them with nothing. You had no equipment. You had nothing. So, anyway,
Wow.
It was different.
That's so cool, though.
Let me tell you a story about one of my special ed children.
Sure.
I had this child, 6th grade, that he was definitely, if there had been special ed classes then, he would have definitely been in the class. He was obvious to look at. But now he could listen. He couldn't write stuff at all, but he listened, and you could ask him a question. So I would I'd go out, sit in the hall when I had a science test. I'd sit in the hall and I'd ask him the questions and write down what he said, and he'd pass. But if you expected him to write it, forget it, 0. But he didn't know how to play with he'd probably have been on autistic scale now. But of course, back then we didn't have that word. But he liked to swing. When we had recess, he liked to swing. He'd get in the swing and just swing, and a lot of lower level children will swing. And I remember, and my children took care of him. And I was at my window. I had just let them out the door to go, and all the swings were taken by other classes. And I stood there at the door and I thought, now what is going to happen here? Because he wanted to swing. Well, some of my boys went and got somebody out of a swing, put Alan in the swing, and went on about playing. And he did his swinging all that.
Aww.
So they took care of him. They took care of each other. I was always impressed by that. And I didn't say a word about who they pulled out of the swing.
Yeah. Do you have any other stories like that about students or about co-teachers? Little anecdotes?
Well, at Body, getting the middle, my principal, Harold Watson, he had us teach in teams. We had I really liked that, and I incorporated it in my upper grades when I was a principal too. You'd have one partner, and the partner I had for many years, she also became a principal. She's still around. She was a young black girl, just fresh out of college, and Mr. Watson said, I'm going to give you this new person, train her. And I didn't have to train her. She was wonderful. But she liked the English and social studies. I liked the math and science, so we fit perfectly. And then back then, everybody taught reading. Everybody. There was no choice about everybody. But we were next door to each other. We could do our own schedule. We'd get together and do our own schedule, and we'd trade classes. So we taught each other's children. I taught hers math and science. She taught mine English and social studies. So you had 2 classes. Well, you could get to know 2 classes pretty well, When you got 5 or 6 and they're rotating around. But in a team of 2, that worked out so well. But you got to get along with the other teacher,
Yeah.
Which we did. We got along well. And we had the same rules and that kind of thing. And that worked well. But I will tell you this funny one, and I shouldn't. You might want to scratch this out. We had a little boy, a little black child that just did nothing. And he was perfectly intelligent, just perfectly smart as he could be. Did nothing. I don't care what you... Don't let him go out and recess. He don't care. He didn't. Well, he failed. Never saw a parent until the last day of school. We sent home the report card with him having to repeat the 6th grade because he failed. Well, here comes Mama. Hadn't seen her all year. Here comes Mama. She's in Mr. Watson's office, wants to see us. We go in. We said, oh, we're going to get it, She's shaking her finger at us, and she shook her finger at me, and she said, you just don't like it. You just didn't like my child because he's black. I said, what about my teaching partner here, who was who was my black teaching partner? She shook her finger and said, well, you just don't like him. So we did that. We laughed. And we said, listen, we haven't seen you all year. He didn't do anything all year. He's not going anywhere. but that's used as an excuse a lot by both races. Believe me. That was I could get along with any child. I didn't always get along with the parents, but I could get along with any child. And I could excuse any child for anything because they're children. But I can't excuse parents. They're supposed to be adults and they're supposed to be responsible. So that I can forgive a child no matter what they did. But forgiving adults, it was really hard. Anyway, it was quite an experience. And my school, I opened Blandy Hills Elementary, and it was fun opening a brand new school. And the superintendent at that time told me to do whatever, organize it any way I wanted to. Just keep him informed, but then organize it however I wanted, do whatever I wanted. He did not let me choose teachers. He sent out forms to all the schools, not only just elementary, but middle and high and all, and said, if you want to transfer to this new school, put down and we'll consider you. And he had a pile of people, applications to come to the new school. And he told me I could look at them and pick out one and throw it in the trash can. And then I could pick out one that he would honor and send with me. And so I did that, and they picked the rest of the teachers. And I said it wasn't fair for me to pick. So they picked the rest of the teachers. But they blessed me with a lot of good teachers. And we had a good school. I had 750 children. And we were pretty full the first day. But the school's still there. But anyway, and then after 30 years of that, I retired. And I had an older teacher one time who told me, said, retire before they want you to. And I thought, that's a good rule to live by on everything you do. Leave before they want you to. While people still think well of you. You can go too long, While people still think well of you, leave. And so anyway, I think I did that. So.
Yeah. Well, we're coming up on the hour, but is there anything else that you'd like to talk about?
We're recording, Andy.
It's all right.
We're recording that.
That's all right.
Go ahead. No, there's Baldwin County. Well, first of all, the college has grown. When I was there were 1,000 girls. That was it.
Wow.
Now there's 7,000? Right at 7.
I
know they kept it at 6,500 for a good many years, but I heard that last year they did up it a little bit to about 7,000. So that's way different than 1,000 girls. 1,000 girls, the teachers knew all of us. I mean, they knew, if they didn't know our names, they knew our faces. They knew where we were supposed to be. And but 7,000 and boys and fraternities and sororities is not the same place. Not the same place. I don't know. Most of the teachers are gone that I knew. Even I got my last degree in '89, and most all of them are gone. Retired or passed away or whatever. But so I don't really have a connection to the college like I used to. One of my best friends just retired, Amelia. You know Amelia Pelton?
I've heard of her.
Yes, I love Amelia. We're in the DAR together. But she's retiring this year, so I won't know anybody. Some of the professors are still living around here, and I know some of them. But it was fun. It was fun. But the boys do make a difference. They do make a difference. I mean, we could tell that right away. The boys made a difference. Now, somebody you might want to talk to is Sammy Hall. Sammy Hall was one of the first boys to enroll at Georgia College.
Okay.
And he was the principal here in town. And he's from here. He's originally from here. So he could tell you the history, and he may know people kin to Flannery O'Connor, I don't know. And he's also a county commissioner. He's our county commissioner out here in this part of town. So I would suggest you call him. He's a good person to. I mean, he's a native, so he's been involved with the politics and the school system and all that. So he'd be a good one to talk to. But.
Cool. I want to ask you one more question. You mentioned that when you met your husband, the Vietnam War was going on. What impact did that have on Milledgeville, if any?
Well, at that time, the Vietnam War was going on heavy, and there were protests around campuses. We could hear it on the news. That's when Kent State, I don't know if you know about Kent State, but 2 students that were protesting were killed at Kent State.
Wow.
They called out the National Guard, and they used real bullets. So it was there were no protests at the Women's College. In fact, there was a big rally in Atlanta at the old stadium, and Polly Bergen, she was an old actress and singer that you probably never heard of. Polly Bergen was going to be there and going to sing the national anthem. And any of us Women's College students who wanted to go to that event, it was going to be a candlelight thing at night, Polly Bergen singing, and it was in support of our soldiers in Vietnam. It was not necessarily pro-war, but pro our soldiers. And anybody that wanted to go could sign up, and they took us to the train, and we rode the train to Atlanta and went to the stadium and participated in that, and then rode the train back to Milledgeville. Now, I don't know who paid for that. I don't know if the college paid for it. We didn't have to pay anything. I don't know if the college paid for it, but anyway, that was the only thing that ever happened, and it wasn't on the campus. They just let us go.
That's interesting.
But there were no protests on Georgia College campus, which I was thankful for, because I couldn't protest anywhere where our young guys are fighting. And see, Jack spent 2 tours in Vietnam. He went straight from Baldwin High School to the Marine Corps. Spent 2 tours in Vietnam. And then I have 2 sons. Both of them were in Iraq. One in the Marines, one in the Army. My dad was in World War II. I mean, his dad was in World War II. So I'm hoping my grandson can skip a war.
Yeah.
He's a junior at GMC. But I'm hoping we can skip one generation.
Yeah.
Anyway, after I retired, I worked for a year for RESA. You know, it's a state organization, Regional Educational Services, something association. I can't remember what RESA stands for. But there are RESA, I'm sure there probably still are RESA offices all over the state. And they're just resource places where you can call in, and they hire some teachers to do staff development, things like that. I worked for them for 1 year. They had a grant where they were hiring people to go into school systems whose scores were really low. And if they were called, we were called administrative coaches. Do you know how popular you are when you walk in and you're supposed to observe in a school and then tell the administrators what they're doing wrong?
No.
I was really popular. That's why I only did it for one school year, and that was it. But anyway, that was an experience. And like I said, I saw things I didn't know existed in school systems. I taught in Tallahassee, Florida too. We lived in Tallahassee for 4 or 5 years, and then came back to Milledgeville. And I taught there at a middle school, Griffin Middle School, and I taught 8th grade English and math, which English was not my thing. But anyway, there, my schools in Clayton County, here, I never ever heard a teacher say, this child just can't learn that. I never heard that. I didn't know that existed, but I found it in other systems. Wow. And that's, if you don't think your child, I mean, those children are yours. First of all, if you had less than 30 children in your class, you were blessed. We had big classes. And those children were mine for that time. And after, I will tell you this, after a few years of teaching here and then in Tallahassee, and I was in the ghetto in Tallahassee, I was going to give up on teaching. I said, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way to make a living. And so we moved to Albany, Georgia for a year, and I did not teach. I got my real estate license, and I did real estate. And I said, I'm never... And when school started that year, Jack and I would be driving somewhere, and we passed a school, and I said, oh, Jack, there's some sorry teacher in there that's got my children. I felt so guilty. I said, I'm supposed to be in there. Somebody's got my children. And so I gave it up and went back to teaching. I said, because I know God would not put that guilt on me if that wasn't what I was supposed to do. Mm-hmm. So, and I just decided, well, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be fun all the time, but that's what you're supposed to do in the world. So, and I was a much better teacher after that. Much better. I gave up the fight and just said, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. So I know I did what I was supposed to do in the world. But then my second career has been traveling, and I know I did that too. So yeah. It's been fun. But Sammy Hall, I would call Sammy Hall for sure. He's a native Baldwin County.
Okay.
Let's see what Jane Thompson said.
Sure. I'll wrap up the recording. Thank you so much. And thank you for your impact on Baldwin County. That's so cool.
We hope you enjoyed learning more about the people and historical events connected to Milledgeville and Flannery O'Connor in this episode. If you or someone you know has stories to share related to either of these topics, we'd love to hear them. In addition to documenting community memories, you'll also help us preserve your story for future generations. Visit our website, collectingthepastmilledgeville.wordpress.com, to learn more.